Okay, so this is Lynsey Moore. She's kind of coming today to give us an industry talk about her role in costume design for TV and film. So please listen politely, and then once the talk's finished, there'll be an opportunity for any questions that you would like to ask. Okay? Over to you, Lynsey. Thank you.
So, I'm a costume designer for television and film. I mainly design TV, although I have done some films as well. I work in comedy, drama, period, historical things, crime dramas. I've done all sorts of things, and today I'm going to talk about how I got into this, my route into the industry, the jobs that I've done, and how I stay skilled in my industry every day. So first of all, my route to the industry. Now, when I started, I never wanted to do costume. I wasn't really interested in film or TV, where you guys, a lot of you do media and something you're interested in. It wasn't on my radar at all. I did science at school, maths, computer science geek. I also did art textiles and liked fashion. So on a whim, I thought I'd go to the London College of Fashion and do an art diploma for a year. Got there, thought everybody was mad, and realised that fashion wasn't for me very quickly. Stuck on a year's course, had to get to the end of it, and there were different modules you could take, and there was a theatre element, so I thought I'd put myself in there and just try and get through the year, and loved it. So suddenly there were scripts, there were characters, there was films to watch, TV, things that I hadn't really thought about before, and it really fitted the way that my mind works and what I like to do. So from there, I decided that I would do a degree, so I stayed at London College of Fashion and did a 3-year degree in costume. And on that course, we focus on how to make, how to design, how to do everything from start from concept, mood boards, whole ideas, production design, from start to finish. And whilst I was there, I did lots of work experience, which today has still helped my career massively. And many of the people I did work experience for, I still work with now, I still know. They work for me, which is interesting too. And this was at a time when there was no Instagram, there was no Twitter. It was quite difficult to get hold of people. So I was sending lots of emails out, trawling the internet, trying to find contacts, friends of friends, people's parents. I didn't have anyone in the industry, so I didn't have any kind of foot in the door, so I had to go out there and do it for myself. Sent lots of letters, all sorts. I've got lots of work experience in the theatres, doing short films, doing all sorts of things. And from there, made contacts that once I graduated that, they already trialled me out and decided that they liked my work. So gave me a job and gave me opportunities. And that's, as I said, with networking. And that still continues now in my industry. Like everyone that I employ, every job that I do, I've got a crew up at the moment, so I need, I'd say like 100 crew I need. They're all people that come through word of mouth, and that, I wouldn't necessarily take someone on who we don't know. We would have someone say, oh, she worked for me, she's great, or he's really good at this, get him in for that. So word of mouth is really important in the industry, and that's in every department, cameras, editing, art department. We all employ each other through recommendations. So everyone is always watching, and that's something that you have to bear in mind when you're on set and when you're doing things. From there, I graduated, and first step was a trainee role. So I was very lucky. We had a technician at the college, and someone like myself who'd been in the industry for years, who was an ex-student at the university, contacted them and said, we need a trainee, we need someone who can drive, because filming's out in the middle of nowhere. Some days you've got to be there at 5 in the morning, sometimes you do night shifts, you don't finish at 2 in the morning. Public transport is difficult. So wanted someone that could drive. And also for the job that I do in costume, it means going out to the hire houses, it means going to the shops, it means going back and forth, so I need to have transport. And because it was a London degree, and where we were based in Oxford Circus, there wasn't many people that could drive. So I made the short list and then had an interview and got jobs from there. And that's where I started. And then from there, like you do, keep getting jobs. Someone likes you, they take you on the next job. Somebody else thought, employ this girl, she was great. So on and so on, and then climbing the ladder until eventually I got an opportunity to be a designer. And my first job was a comedy program, and from there again, just word of mouth, and that's how I ended up where I am today. So this is some of the projects that I've designed. So at the moment, The Bubble's just come out, that's on Netflix, so that's a film that I shot last year during lockdown number 3, which was horrendous, because all the shots were shot, which if you're doing contemporary costume where you're buying things from the shops and they're shot, it poses quite a big problem. So that's probably, the newest one on there is The Curse. I shot that last year, and that's just come out on Channel 4. did a show called I May Destroy You that was really well received by BBC and HBO, and all sorts of different projects. I tend to design contemporary as opposed to period dramas. These are both period dramas, but I think that's just preference. I just enjoy it more. It's just something that I like. And then at the moment, just starting a new project for another series at HBO, a company called Bad Robot, and that's another contemporary drama with some kind of supernatural twist to it. So I want to talk a bit about demands of the job. So the first thing you need to know, long hours is horrendous. So 12-hour days for sure. Most days, for me, I get up at 5, have to drive to work, which could be in the middle of nowhere. Then the shooting day is normally 11 hours. For costume, we have prep time beforehand, so it could be 12 hours. If you're a big film, they just keep going over and over and over time. So you could do an extra hours overtime, 2 hours, 3 hours. So I've done 16-hour days, 17-hour days, 6 days a week sometimes. So they're hard. The hours are really, really long. They're really, really difficult. You are paid well for it. So that is something to bear in mind. And if you're sensible with your money, obviously you're going to be freelancers if you're doing this kind of job. So you have to be really good with finances, and if you couldn't work for those long hours and save it, then you can have time off afterwards. And you'll need to have that buffer too, because the next job might not start for another month or so, which means you've got no income. So that's one thing to really get your head around as well. If you do a creative job, that a lot of the time it is freelance, which means no salary, no sick pay, and you have to be really good at doing your accounts and things like that. And so that also brings me to negotiating. So as part of being a freelancer, it's up to you to negotiate your deal. A line producer will ring you and say, this is what you've got, this is your money. You have to be comfortable talking about money and saying that, no, it needs to be this, and playing that horrible game back and forth, which when you start off as a trainee, there's not so much kind of room to manoeuvre on that, but as you get higher and higher up the chain as well, you can have an agent, which is what I have, who I pay to do that for me because I hate doing it, and they get you better deals. Another part of my job is budgeting. So script comes along, it wants everything, it wants the world, then they give you the budget, it's not possible. So it's then up to me to find a way to make it possible, or to tell them what isn't possible, and to create something that is then actually achievable in the time, and like I said, to have the money for. And with that, sometimes that completely shapes your concept. So I did a Tudor period drama. There wasn't enough time, there wasn't enough money to do it properly. Full dresses made, which take months. Period dramas need sort of 4 or 5 months to prep it. And we had 7 weeks, which meant that it wasn't possible. This was the lockdown number 2. Again, fabric shop shut, nobody's working. So I had to come up with a concept where I completely changed it, that each person just had 1 dress each, because that's all we had time to make, and they had interchangeable pieces so that we could just sort of mix and match them on set, so that we got lots of different outfits from essentially 1 dress. Straight back all the embroidery, we couldn't afford to have that, so we made it all about the colour, made it more modern. So sometimes it can be a good thing, and it forces you to be creative and you come up with something different than you ever thought of before. A lot of the times it's difficult. And that's across the board. So art department have the same thing. Obviously cameras, they want every camera, lighting want every light, and you have to rein it in and find ways to make it work for the budget and the time frame that we have. This is an important one, dealing with creatives and multiple personalities. Creative people can be quite difficult. I say this as a creative person myself. Some directors, some actors, they're very visual people. They know what they want. They can be very eccentric. They can be very quirky. Some actors I have to speak to, they want to be in character all day, and I have to go along with it and pretend that they are that person, which is bizarre to me, but that's just the way it is. Some of them need to zone out and do yoga before a take and complete silence around them. Okay, that's something you've got to respect too. Some directors want to work in the craziest ways. Some want everything on paper, some want everything digital. Some people want to do meditations before they start. There's all sorts of things going on, so it's quite interesting, and you have to be quite open to it. Kind of get along with, be on board for those kind of things. Creative versus non-creative. Obviously when I started this, I think I thought my whole job would be creative, and I would just be designing all the time. In reality, probably creativity is probably about 80%, in comparison. Oh, sorry, creativity probably about 20%. 80% of my day is spent managing, organising, scheduling, budgeting, having meetings, trying to convince people to do things, all sorts of things. So it's keeping that in mind that it's not always completely creative. And again, that's to do with the other departments as well. They have the same things that I said, that the budget restraints, a lot of waiting around, a lot of working with difficult people. That it's not solely creative, but it is very creative. And I love my job. I'm not selling it at the moment, but I absolutely love it. And part of being creative and giving ideas is that there's going to be lots of opinions and there's going to be rejections. In general, there's going to be people that don't agree with your concept, or I don't like that costume, or even just going for jobs. You know, you're going to have to show your ideas, and people are going to say yes or no, we want you to have the job. And it's not taking that personally. It's a very personal thing to work with creative people, so with directors. They might not like my work. That's not a criticism of my work or me having criticism of theirs. Sometimes you just don't gel, and there'd be absolutely no point us working together because we spend the whole job butting our heads and just not ever being on the same page. So it's a good thing sometimes. If you don't get a job, it's like, okay, that's good, you're not meant to work, and that's fine. And you find the people that you do work with, and then ask you to work with them again and again. And you know, you start to build this relationship with a person that you start to understand all their quirks, all the things they like, the colour palettes that they like and how they work, which then makes working in a creative area a lot easier. So yes, this leads me to then how I get a job. So like I said, I have an agent who puts me forward to things. So lots of projects come in, she might suggest things that she thinks that I'm suitable for, things that I'm a complete wild card for, but I should go for anyway. Also, people contact me directly. Like I said, there's people that I have worked with before who then want me to work with them again. And now that I've been a designer for 8-9 years, so I've got a sort of established portfolio. So there are people now who like my work and contact directly because they like the aesthetic that I've created. So that's the first thing. Then my agent or whoever will send me a script, and I decide whether I like it. I think it's something I can do with it, or something that interests me. And from there, if I do, then we'll arrange a meeting and I'll do mood boards for the meeting. Mood boards can be really tricky. I find that personally one of the hardest things of my job, especially at the beginning. If you're doing a series, they might only send you 1 script to read or 2 scripts. That doesn't tell you anything. Like for me, if I'm designing a character, all that might be in the first script is Angie, 25. I have to guess who she is. I have to piece together things in the script and kind of figure out who she is, what she's doing, what kind of job she does, what does she look like. And there's been times when you get to a meeting and they're like, oh no, in episode 6, Angie turns out to be a terrorist. And you're like, well, I could never have guessed this, you know. So there is a lot of trial and error with things. Sometimes if you're lucky, they send you a bio where they will write down little bits and bobs about the characters, which really helps. And then again, you kind of have to guess, you know, with mood boards, you have to just do what you think is right, create the world that you think is going to be, or, you know, what the character's going to look like. And it can be very nerve-wracking. It's something that, you know, like I said, I've done this for a while now and I still don't like doing it. It is, you know, showing anyone new ideas is quite a personal thing, especially when they start pulling it apart and they want to, like, wasn't what I was thinking. And like I said, it brings you back to that rejection thing, but it's part of the process, and sometimes it goes the other way, and then that's really nice when it's like done. So interviews, I mean, this has changed massively because of COVID. Now a lot of my interviews are on Zoom, which is now practical, it's face-to-face, seeing how you get on with people. Because like I said, a lot of this job, long hours, you really working closely with directors, actors, producers, you've got to get on and you've got to be, you know, have similar vibe to them and have the same energy and enthusiasm for a project. So doing that across Zoom is difficult. Also, trying to present mood boards on Zoom is a new thing that I've struggled with. Obviously before, I'd have a board, I could talk through certain images and point out bits and bobs, and now you don't really have that facility, so it means that when you share your screen and you share a mood board, there's just all the images there and you can't specifically point. So sometimes I might have an image, but part of the image I really like a certain bit about it, and I want to say this part is what I like, but they'll, you know, if you show them the whole thing, they get confused and like, yeah, but I don't like that, but you're like, no, that's not the bit of the image you're meant to be focusing on. Which when you do it in person is very easy to talk someone through the bit you want them to see, but on a screen it's not so easy, so you have to be, well, I've had to learn to be a lot more selective with the images I've picked. So I've got some mood boards to show you, some different ones that I've done. This was one for I May Destroy You, so this was an original one from Michaela Cole's inspiration for her costumes. All my mood boards are different. I don't have a set way of doing something. I think all the time I evolve how I present something, the style that I choose. I think because each project as well is so different. Every story is different. The look of the show is different. Therefore, your boards are going to be different. You know, if you keep it the same as well, it gets quite boring. I think for yourself, you have to challenge yourself. So this one I did quite an old-fashioned way. I decided to cut things up and make it look quite scrapbooky and actually stuff it down. And this was just a very loose thing to chat with Michaela at the beginning through her ideas for the costume, what she was thinking, and we wanted it to be quite homemade and rough looking because it's quite true to her character and was meant to be all about vintage and doing things herself. This one is a more recent one that I did. This is one I had to send across. So this is one I had to present on Zoom and I had to send across. Normally, I don't send big boards. You have to be careful about sending things because it comes to me before I send boards. And then they have them. I didn't get the job, but they have my boards. And then there was some suspicious costumes that came out from the show that looked quite similar to boards that I had created. So you have to be careful with these things. So this was all sent through my agent. But because I sent it across, I needed to write on it, which is not something I normally do. I have to give some idea of what I was thinking. Because if I just sent these images without instruction, they might not necessarily know what I was thinking or what my plans were. So this was sent as part of a big, I want to say a folder, I think it was about 20 mood boards that went across to America for loads of people to look through and decide if they would want to meet me. Which was, yeah, it's cool. And then I had a meeting and I was interviewed by 9 people at once on Zoom, which is crazy, but that is the world at the moment. This is another board I did recently for another job pitch that I did. This was a period one, going to be set in 1982. The character was punk with some kind of, I can't remember, some kind of demon influence. He's meant to let it go at some point. So sometimes I draw on boards. The last 2 I've drawn because sometimes you can't always find what you're looking for. For me, I like drawing. I really like to illustrate. So it keeps me creative. I've been off work for a couple of months. Decided to take a break. So going crazy at home. So I needed to draw. But I don't always do that. Sometimes you create boards whereby you just want to create the tone of the whole piece because for me, it's not just about the costumes. It's the principal characters and the main people. If you're creating a world, you've got to think about the entire world around that. That means the extras, what they look like. And for me, I have to dress all the piece. So every extra, everything you see in the TV show has been chosen by myself. If it's period, we've dressed them from head to toe. If it's contemporary, they'll come in their own clothes, but we will change things about them. I'll have an Arctic lorry full of clothes, we'll restyle them, change them around to make them fit the vibe or the energy of the place. So this is an upcoming show that I will be doing, and it's this idea of London. We want to present all ages, communities, ethnicities, all sorts of things, and it's meant to be about nightlife in London and kind of the grittiness of it, right down to those horrible, I can't remember what they're called, those buses that take all the drunk on them out on a Friday night. So they're basically looking at the National Health Service as part of the project and how they're overworked and understaffed and have to deal with these kind of awful things every weekend. This was another one that I did for Anne Boleyn. So this was the Tudor drama that I talked about earlier. It's meant to be a historical piece, but it's meant to have a contemporary influence to it. So looking at modern day fashion things and also original influences. And again, this one I was here to present in person, so I didn't need to do much to it. This one that was for final illustration. So sometimes when I finish a project, I do a final illustration just because I like to. Sometimes it's a useful thing to have. And at this point, I can then add a face because this is the other thing when you're doing these boards. I don't know who they're going to cast, which for me is a big, big thing, casting, because there is no point in me designing a costume for someone. And this has happened a few times, design a costume and then they've cast a guy who's like 6'7", who's huge, and it's never going to work for you. You've got to go back to the drawing board and start again. The same with women, there's no point in designing something if it turns out she's really, really tall or she's really curvy and it's not going to work for her. You have to look at the body that you're given and the face that you're given and create a character from that. So at this point I can then add a face. That's probably the only difference. It's a lot more precise and exact than what I've designed. That was another final illustration as well, from costume from I May Destroy You. I think I've got it wrong. So sort of lastly then is how to stay skilled. Watching TVs and films is a big thing. Like I said, it wasn't something I was massively into and I've really got into. It's really important to be watching all the time, see other people's work, see what's going on at the moment, see what is out there, because not only is it inspiring, these are going to be the people you're going to be working with. There's been many shows that I've watched and then that director has asked me to come to interview for them. I have to know what they're doing, I have to know what their style is. So looking at people's work all the time is a really good thing to do, and with that, keeping up to date with technology. I mean, since I started, it's crazy how much things have changed. We weren't doing things by apps and iPads and all sorts of things, so we had a massive boom in technology, and all the time things are changing in how directors want things set and the kind of programs and apps and things you have to use are constantly evolving, so keeping on top of that. But also keeping up to date with fashion, art, and just generally how the world looks, because especially if you're shooting contemporary things, you're a director, you're a cinematographer, production designer, you've got to create sets that are relevant, costumes that are relevant, and things that are actually what's going on in the world. Sometimes you get a director who's older, who describes some restaurant and wants the waiters to be in white shirts and black trousers. And like, they haven't done that in years, nobody does that. Like, get with the times. And that's the same for many sets. Sometimes you walk in and you think, offices don't look like this anymore, doctors' surgeries don't look like this. Especially since the pandemic, so many things have changed. You need to see hand sanitizer everywhere, like simple things. You've got to keep on top of how it looks. Otherwise, by the time your show comes out, it looks dated, and that's a really hard thing when you do contemporary. Especially if you're shooting a big project, it might not come out for a year later. By the time it's come out, it looks old. So you have to really think about those kinds of things. And for me, that's difficult with clothes, because clothes date so quickly. So it's trying to find things that will stand the test of time and not look horrendous in a year's time. For me, another thing I do is I'm a mentor on many schemes, so I have mentees and people that I look after, I bring them on jobs, I take up the work experience, have lots of trainees. So it's always meeting the next generation, because you guys know probably way more than I knew when I was your age about the industry, and you'll have ways of doing things and approaches that I would never thought of. So it's a two-way thing. I can teach you lots of things, but you can teach me just as much. And most of my trainees that come on the job will tell me about shops I didn't know about, or websites I should be looking at, and all sorts of things like that. And that's also the same with working with new people. When you're freelance, sometimes there's this want to, for comfort, that you want to keep working with the same people because you know them, they're going on to the next job. And it's like family, you could just stay with them. But they can make you quite tired, especially if you're trying to be creative. Sometimes you need to come and work with new people who do things a completely different way, because everybody does. And that really sort of infuses you and it gives you like a new enthusiasm for the job. And again, teaches you loads of new skills. And in times when I've worked with completely new crews, and they've been amazing and taught me ways to do things which were much quicker than I could do before. And with that, just being open to sort of learning all the time, and coming back to colleges and giving talks and meeting the next generation. I think that's it. In terms of my side, I think I'm done. Yeah, thank you. But
guys, if I've got any questions, Lynsey, I'd like to ask. Don't be shy. Now's your opportunity to ask anything you want to know.
Sure.
What's your job title?
Costume designer.
Okay.
Any more questions? Yeah?
What costumes have you designed for Mobile Media?
What did you say? Sorry, I can't hear you.
What costumes have you designed for Mobile Media?
As in from other...
Completely, yeah.
Oh, so what other companies have you worked with apart from Netflix and HBO? Any other companies?
BBC, ITV, Channel 4. Normally when you work for TV shows or streaming things, so I've done shows like Apple, done all sorts. You normally work for a production company, so the production company owns the script. Their name is something like Shiny Button or something random, completely random, and they then sell it to the streaming companies. And sometimes it's a co-production, so you work really closely with the BBC. Sometimes they buy it afterwards, so you have no dealing with them. The next job I'm doing is HBO, and HBO are very much involved, so it's their project, and it means that you're bound to all sorts of secrecy and contracts. But yeah, I think I've done most channels. Channel 5, I've done Dave, I've done all sorts of things. Sky, everything.
Which one do you like the most?
To be honest, like, the actual companies don't really matter to me because I'm interested in the script. Who's giving me the most money to, not personally as a wages, who's giving me the most budget to do something that I want to do and something that's creative. So I think one of my favourite jobs was I May Destroy You, one of the hardest, but for me creatively, I loved it.
Have you had any unusual requests for costume design?
Yes, but I can't think of any. I mean, get a lot of short male actors who ask for heels, secret heels, little insteps that go inside their shoes that make them look taller without anyone knowing that they're wearing heels, which always makes me laugh. Spanks for men. A lot of women want, these things that hold them all in, but sometimes you go, man, it's the same thing. There's all sorts of weird requests, but most of them are kind of hidden things that they don't want anyone to know about. In terms of designs, I don't really get asked to design anything particularly weird. Well, there was one, we did this scene in chewing gum where it was like an adult fetish sex scene where they wanted to dress up as an adult baby. And I had to buy a giant nappy to a man and dress him up as a baby. That was quite weird, but things like that you just kind of have to go along with. And you end up going on websites that you don't ever want to go on, and I dread to think what my browsing history is on my laptop, but there's all sorts of weird things you have to buy.
What's your piece of advice for a young person today trying to get into the industry? What's the key things that they should be trying to do?
I think get out there, do work experience. First of all, to see if you actually like it. Like I said, the hours are hard, the environment's difficult, and you'll know pretty quickly when you really enjoy it. Some people come to set and absolutely love it and feel that adrenaline buzz and want to be part of it. Other people realise it's not for them and perhaps they want to do something more behind the scenes. And it could be working in an editing suite, it could be making props or doing something that's more 9 to 5 and outside of that kind of crazy circus. So I think getting out there for you guys to just see what you like is a really important thing. Start making contacts because, like I said, it's freelance, so it is all about who you know. And this comes from someone who didn't know anybody, had no connection to the industry at all. But I managed to do it, so it is possible. But it is just sending those messages. And I get people all the time on Instagram who message me and ask me for work experience and ask to come and shadow me for the day or to answer some questions, which I try and do as much as I can, so there are many people in the industry that want to help and are looking to bring new people into it. And at the moment, it's the best time for you guys because we're really understaffed. So last year, I think it was the most TV and films that England had ever made, record numbers. And we didn't have enough crew, which were massive problems for us because we couldn't get anybody in, which meant we have double the work. There's so many productions going on, so everyone had less crew, double the work, really stressful. But they said it's going to take 4 years for us to get to the crew levels that we actually need to serve the country's sort of demands for filming. Loads of new studios are opening, so it's a brilliant time if you want to get into the industry. It's going to be a lot of work, and everybody's looking for trainees and new people to bring in. So just reach out, and something will come of it.
How many people are typically in a team on a set for your department?
In my department, it depends. So on the smallest things, if it's a comedy, a small thing, I will have me. There will be a supervisor who basically lives on my truck. So I have a massive Arctic lorry, which is our office, and stores all the costumes downside. She lives there, she manages everything from set and base, actors that are travelling off to location, she makes sure they're dressed. When they're coming back, they get undressed, setting things up for the next day. That's 2. Then there'll be standbys, and they're people that look after the actors on set, so check the continuity, so they have to have a change on set, get them changed into it, help with radio miking. There are sound guys there, but if it's a woman and it's a delicate thing and you've got to get down the back of your dress or up a skirt or something, then they'll get involved. Sometimes it needs sewing in, sometimes a hole needs cutting. So I normally have 2 of those, and then I'll have a trainee. So that is minimally 4 in a team. Like I said, next job I've got 100 crew. So it can go, depending on the nature of the job, the size of the job. This next job we're shooting in 3 countries at once. So I've got to have teams all over the world kind of working it, which means obviously to do that, then I've got to have, it has to spread out into different departments. Sometimes that for me, I quite like doing this movie, but it's manageable, it's just us, and it's like a little family, we couldn't keep an eye on everything. Sometimes when it's a big thing, it's quite scary, there's so many things are going on at once, and I can't physically be on top of it all when I have to delegate. So yeah, it could be, from what's that, 5 to 100, could be more.
Anybody else?
Where do you find your inspiration? Do you carry out research?
Yes. Like everyone, well, I don't know, maybe it's not cool anymore, but I have Pinterest. So I've always got boards going for things that I like and things that I save on Instagram. But normally, once I get a script, I know then what the area is. It could be like I said, a Tudor thing. It could be punks. So then I just start researching. I start looking for Getty images, just Googling random things, Pinterest boards, and sometimes you'll find some event that happened, some kind of, I had the job that I did, it was all about political rallies, so I found one image which mentioned some kind of politician who I thought that was exactly like the character I was, so then from there you start searching more of him, and it's just navigating the internet. Sometimes it's photos, I go out and take photographs, so yesterday I went to Brick Lane, just looking around what's there, shop-wise, what people are wearing, because it's very relevant to the next job that I'm doing. So it can be a bit of everything, but in general, I like to say TV shows. I watched Euphoria recently and Mayor of Easttown, which both of them I thought, okay, this is completely inspired me and gave me loads of ideas. So it can come from anywhere, it's not one particular avenue, it's just being open and looking out for it.
Is there a question at the back?
Yeah, what was your most successful costume design so far?
Probably I May Destroy You. That one was very well received and I was nominated for an Emmy for that, which was really cool. And was nominated for a few awards for that. So that's probably the one I've had the most successful or been recognised. And like I said, before I really enjoyed. So probably that. And probably the one I showed you, the one with the wings, that I just loved. It was, for me, just a great costume.
Continue another one.
What was the costume that you find most difficult to do?
What type of costume do you find most difficult to create and make? Yeah.
I don't know, because every costume has a problem, I'm telling you. You get into set, it's noisy in the sound department are moaning, or it doesn't sit still, and in continuity you're going crazy because it's gone over your shoulder and now it's not like that for a take. Or it's riding up under the sound pack show or a bra show. Every costume is a problem. Every single one has to be sewn, stuck down, toupee taped. My poor staff, my standbys who are on set, I don't envy them. They're amazing keeping on top of it. I think the trickiest ones, the ones that gave me the most pain in my life were the Tudor ones, because I was like, it's a great idea, we'll do these mix and match pieces. What I hadn't figured out was that during the shoot that the actresses would be eating lots of cake every day, so they were getting bigger and bigger, which then meant the pieces didn't fit and they needed to line up exactly. We were constantly moving poppers in, and then they'd be wearing thermal layers. It was so cold in this castle, so they kept trying to sneak extra tights underneath so the dresses wouldn't fit. I'd have to confiscate the tights, then we'd have to put them back in. It drove me insane. It was 6 weeks of hell and it was freezing, and we were filming in a tarmac quarry with mud like this up to here, and full-length dresses, and just every day this much mud on the hem of the dresses trying to get rid of it. It was just awful. But like I said, every job poses some kind of challenge and you have to think of something and just try and keep positive. Yes, Ed?
How do you actually make the costumes? Do you start with, for example, a plain old t-shirt, or do you start completely from scratch?
It depends. I do a bit of both. I like vintage. I love buying old bits of clothes and then cutting them up, putting through them, sewing bits and bobs together. Things like the Tudor dresses, they have to start from scratch. They have to come from a drawing. I have to draw it. I have to find the fabric. I have to send it to people to do because I'm not clever enough and I don't have the patience to make it. There's amazing people who will cut it, who will fit it. It's a very, very long, difficult process to have things made. And the thing that I don't like about it is sometimes it, with contemporary, you do a fitting, so kind of like that t-shirt, take it off, put another one on. You can't do that when you've just spent 6 weeks making a dress. You've got to somehow make that one work, especially if it's not a lot of money, and you've just spent £5 grand on it. It has to work. So the stress of that is awful. I mean, in general, costume is a very stressful job. Like I said, I love it, it's very creative, but you are making things out of nothing all the time.
How frustrating is that to work with such small budgets when you want to create what's in your head, but actually the budget doesn't allow you to have the embroidery on the dress, for example?
Or just learn to live with it now?
You kind of have to, because there's no point. I've been there where I've been angry and wanted to do more, or tried to do more and make it work, and then, especially in early stages of my career, I was like, okay, it doesn't matter, I'll make it work anyway. I couldn't afford to do it as well as I wanted, so I ended up with a kind of rubbish outcome. I would have been far better to have done something completely different to the precious thing that was in my mind and done it well. And that's a lesson I've taken from anything. And that's the same with directors who get obsessed about sets and wanting a certain location. It's got to look like this. Can't afford it, it's not available. They then try and make it out something else that and it looks rubbish. It would have been better, some of them, and I've worked with directors who've got actually because this thing. We started getting 3% completely different. Okay, this isn't what I wanted, but this is amazing. A lot of the time, what you then ended up with is better than the first thing that you wanted. That's happened to me so many times, and I've been grateful that I couldn't have the first thing that I wanted, because what I've come up with is way better.
Anybody else?
So do they give you a budget, studio money to work with, or do you have to pay for all the costume items yourself, your own money?
So they give me a budget, not paying for anything myself. Sometimes I have credit cards, because sometimes when you're waiting for floats to come through, there can be that bridge of days where you're just, accounts have been slow. And I shouldn't have to do this, but sometimes I need, in order to get something in time, I need to pay for it. I can put it on a credit card and then it can reimburse me straight away. But it is from there, it comes from their pot, their purse essentially. It's not, I don't fund it. I don't have 2 million or whatever it is. Some costume things are crazy. So some jobs, so the next job that I'm doing, the staffing budget alone for 10 months is like 2 million. That's the staffing budget. And then on top of that, we've got a costume budget, which will probably be a similar thing. So we're talking a lot of zeros, which I definitely need to have.
Thank you so much. Could everyone join me in saying thank you?